Ladies and gentlemen, the world just shifted. India has ended trade with America and is turning toward Russia and China, and whether you see it as bold strategy or dangerous gamble, one thing is certain, this is a defining moment. Because in a single decision, India is rewriting its future, challenging the balance of power, and proving that no alliance is permanent when the price of dependence is too high. This isn't just politics. It's a masterclass in taking control when the world least expects it. Ladies and gentlemen, when the winds of change blow, you can either build walls or you can build windmills. And right now, we are standing in a moment where history is shifting beneath our feet. India has decided to cut trade ties with America and turn towards Russia and China. It's not just a political move, it's a wake-up call, a reminder that in this world nothing is guaranteed except change itself. This isn't about countries on a map, it's about the power of decision-making, the courage to pivot, and the reality that relationships, whether between nations or people, are built on trust, respect, and mutual benefit. When one side no longer finds the value it once saw, it will seek new alliances, new partnerships, new possibilities. And isn't that the same in life? If the table you've been sitting at no longer serves you, you don't just keep eating there, you stand up, walk away, and find a table where your presence is valued. This is not about turning away from the past. It's about moving toward the future. Sometimes the future is uncomfortable, sometimes it's unpredictable, and sometimes it looks nothing like what you imagined. But those who adapt, those who see opportunities where others see crises, those are the ones who come out stronger. The moment you stop depending entirely on one source, one partner, one path, is the moment you unlock freedom. We've been conditioned to believe that stability comes from holding on, from maintaining the same relationships, the same deals, the same patterns for as long as possible. But in reality, stability comes from flexibility, from knowing that if one door closes, you have the courage and resourcefulness to open another. This is what India is doing, testing the strength of its independence, not asking for permission, not waiting for approval, but making moves that align with its own long-term vision. Every choice in life carries a cost. To move toward something new, you must leave something behind. The comfort of familiarity is tempting. It feels safe, it feels predictable. But safety is an illusion when it depends on someone else's decisions. Real security comes when you have multiple paths forward, multiple hands to shake, multiple doors to knock on. And this isn't just for nations, it's for you, your job, your relationships, your ambitions. They should never hinge on just one source of validation or survival. When you cut a tie, you're not just breaking away from someone else. You're breaking away from the version of yourself that depended on them. That is a transformation. That is growth. It is not reckless. It is strategic. And it's a reminder that the strongest people and nations don't wait for the storm to pass. They build a new ship and set sail in a different direction. Now, people will criticize. They always do. Anytime you make a bold decision, expect resistance, expect doubt, expect the whispers about how it's too risky, too dangerous, too uncertain. But the critics have one thing in common. They're watching from the shore while you're out at sea. They're talking about the risks while you're learning to navigate the waves, and you can't let their fear become your anchor. What happens when you turn to new partners? You expand your possibilities. You diversify your strengths. You create. 8. Leverage. And leverage is power, because when you have options, you negotiate from a position of strength, not desperation. You can set your terms, you can define your future, and in a world where influence is currency, having options is everything. There is also a deeper lesson here about identity. Who are you when you are no longer defined by your biggest partnership? When the one relationship that shaped your strategies and your security is gone, what remains? The answer: your values, your capabilities, your adaptability. These are the things that no treaty, no contract, no alliance can take away. Turning to Russia and China is not about abandoning one friend for another. It's about recognizing that friendship in the geopolitical world is rarely permanent. It is built on shifting interests, and the wise understand that aligning with what serves your vision today does not mean you are trapped by it tomorrow. This flexibility is a form of strength that individuals and nations alike can learn from. In life, there will be moments where you feel the ground moving beneath you, where you're forced to make a call before you're ready. You won't have all the information, you won't have perfect clarity, and yet you will have to act. This is the reality of leadership. Stepping forward even when you can't see the entire path, because you trust your ability to figure it out as you go. Think about how this applies to your own life. How many times have you held back from making a move because you didn't have the perfect plan? How many times have you stayed in a situation because you feared what others would say if you left? But here's the truth. The longer you delay, the more control you give away. You don't need a perfect plan. You need the courage to start moving and the discipline to keep going. The world doesn't reward hesitation. It rewards action. And this moment right now is proof that when you take decisive action, you change the game. You don't wait for someone else to dictate your future, you write it yourself. There's also an important message here about resilience. Shifting alliances is not easy. It requires building trust from scratch, learning new systems, negotiating in unfamiliar territory. It's the same as starting a new career, building a new relationship, or moving to a new place. You will stumble, you will face challenges, and you will question your decision. But resilience is built not in the easy days, but in the difficult ones. And when those difficult days come, you have a choice. See them as proof you made the wrong decision, or see them as proof that you're on a path worth walking. Because anything worth building is going to test you. And the tests are not meant to break you. They are meant to shape you into someone capable of handling the rewards that come after. What's happening now is a reminder that change is inevitable, but progress is intentional. You can't control the shifting tides of the world, but you can control how you position your sails. You can choose to be reactive, letting events dictate your actions, or proactive, making moves that put you ahead of the curve. And maybe the greatest takeaway here is that no matter how big the stage, the principles are the same. Whether you're a country on the world map or an individual navigating your own journey, your success depends on your ability to adapt, your willingness to take risks, and your commitment to building a future that aligns with your vision, not someone else's. In the end, the message is simple. Don't cling to what's familiar just because it's comfortable. Comfort zones are where dreams go to die. When the world changes, you change with it, not out of fear, but out of the unshakable belief that your future is worth fighting for. And that's exactly how history is written, by those willing to turn the page before the ink has dried. When a nation makes a bold move like this, it is more than just a headline. It's a statement. And to the world, we will decide our own future, and that is something every individual can learn from. How many of us spend years living by the expectations of others, trying to maintain peace, afraid of upsetting the balance, even when that balance is built on a foundation that no longer serves us? Yet the moment you choose to step away from dependency, the moment you say, "I am not afraid to lose what isn't truly mine," you begin to reclaim your power. Breaking away from something long-standing is never comfortable. You will be questioned, doubted, and even condemned. People will say you're making a mistake. They'll tell you it's too soon, too risky, too uncertain. But they're not the ones living your reality. They're not the ones who feel the cost of staying the same. And in moments like this, you must remember, those who take the biggest steps forward are often the ones who had the courage to walk away first. There's a powerful truth in understanding that alliances, whether between nations or individuals, should be chosen out of mutual respect, not fear. If you stay in a partnership because you fear the alternatives, you're not in a partnership, you're in a prison. And prisons are comfortable only to those who've forgotten what freedom feels like. Freedom demands sacrifice. It demands a willingness to stand alone if necessary, to endure the uncertainty of not knowing what tomorrow holds in exchange for the chance to shape that tomorrow on your own terms. That's the price of sovereignty. That's the cost of independence. And whether you're a nation of 1 billion people or a single human being, the principle is the same. Some will interpret this shift as betrayal, others will see it as strategy. But the deeper layer here is self-preservation. In a world where influence and resources are constantly shifting, no one can afford to stand still. And this move is not about taking sides, it's about taking control. If you wait too long to act, you'll find yourself at the mercy of circumstances you could have influenced earlier. Every new alliance is a gamble. Will it work? Will it last? Will it deliver the results you hope for? No one can answer those questions at the start. But the alternative, doing nothing, guarantees stagnation. You cannot grow without risking something, and you cannot evolve by holding on to every piece of your past. Think about the moments in your own life when you had to make a leap. Maybe it was walking away from a job that no longer inspired you. Maybe it was ending a relationship that drained your energy. Maybe it was standing up for what you believed in, even when it cost you acceptance. In each case, you had to step into the unknown, and in each case, you had to trust that your capacity to adapt was greater than your fear of failure. This is what real progress looks like. It's messy, it's unpredictable, and it often comes with resistance from those who don't see the vision you see. But leadership isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about making the call that serves the future, even if it's unpopular in the present. Shifting toward new partners like Russia and China requires more than agreements on paper. It requires the mindset of adaptability. New systems, new terms, new expectations. None of this comes without friction, but friction is how sparks are made, and sparks are what light the fires of transformation. In the geopolitical arena, power isn't just about who you stand with, it's about who you can stand without. If your stability depends entirely on one partner, then you are not truly stable. True stability comes from diversity of alliances, diversity of resources, diversity of opportunities. When you have multiple options, you are free to act from choice, not desperation. And let's be clear, choice is the ultimate form of leverage. With it, you can negotiate on your own terms. Without it, you will always be in a position of compromise. That's as true in business and relationships as it is in politics. When you have the ability to walk away, you no longer fear the loss. You understand that your worth doesn't depend on a single connection. This is not just a lesson for governments. It's a call to every person to diversify their own life. Don't let your happiness hinge on one person's opinion of you. Don't let your financial stability rely on a single income stream. Don't let your sense of self be tied to one role, one identity, one path. Spread your roots deep and wide, so when one branch breaks, the whole tree still stands strong. We live in a time when alliances are fluid and opportunities shift quickly. Those who succeed are not always the ones with the most resources. They are the ones who move the fastest, adapt the quickest, and stay open to change. That requires both courage and humility, courage to take the first step and humility to learn along the way. It's tempting to think that once you make a big change, the hardest part is over. But in reality, the hardest part often begins after the decision. That's when the real work starts, building trust with new partners, navigating unfamiliar waters, and proving to yourself and others that the move was worth it. The patience to see it through is as important as the boldness to start. There's a certain kind of strength that comes from making a decision and standing by it even when the road gets tough. It's the strength of knowing that every step forward, no matter how small, is still movement toward a future you chose. And that sense of ownership over your path is priceless. The world will watch closely to see what comes next. Some will wait for failure. Others will anticipate success, but the only opinion that truly matters is the one you have of yourself and the belief you hold in your vision. Because when you believe deeply enough, you find the resilience to push through setbacks, the creativity to solve new problems, and the determination to keep going when others give up. And here's something people often forget. Change doesn't have to mean severing all ties forever. Sometimes walking away is simply about creating space to grow, to explore, to discover what else is possible. And if the paths align again in the future, you can return to the table with more strength, more resources, and more leverage than before. The decision to turn toward new alliances is, at its core, an act of self-definition. It's saying, we will not be shaped entirely by our history, we will shape our future by choice. And that is something anyone can practice no matter where they are in life. Every day you have the chance to redefine what you stand for, to reassess where you're heading, and to realign your actions with your vision. It takes clarity to make such a move, clarity about what you value, what you're willing to risk, and what you refuse to compromise on. And once you have that clarity, you'll notice that the fear of change starts to shrink because you're no longer moving blindly, you're moving with purpose. Every bold shift is an invitation to grow, not just for the one making it, but for everyone watching. It challenges the rest of us to look at our own lives and ask, where am I holding on out of habit instead of choice? Where have I mistaken comfort for security? Where could I be braver? And when you start answering those questions honestly, you'll realize that the power to transform your life has been in your hands all along. And here's the thing, once a move like this is made, there is no going back to the way things were. You can revisit old partnerships, you can rebuild bridges, but you cannot undo the fact that you have declared to the world, we will stand on our own feet. That declaration changes everything. It changes how others see you, but more importantly, it changes how you see yourself. The moment you take that step, you begin to think differently, act differently, and carry yourself differently, because you are no longer operating from dependence, you are operating from ownership. Ownership is powerful. When you own your decisions, you stop waiting for someone else to rescue you, to give you a handout, to decide your future. You realize that no one is coming to save you. And that's not a reason to panic, it's a reason to get to work. It's the moment you stop saying, I hope, and start saying, I will. Every nation, every person eventually reaches that point. You look around and realize the ground has shifted beneath your feet. The safety nets you relied on are no longer there, and you have two options. Complain about the loss or build something better. The truth is, many will choose the first option because it's easier. It's easier to blame, to hold grudges, to dwell on the past. But progress does not live in the past. Progress lives in the courage to act now. There is a hidden advantage in letting go. It forces you to innovate. When you can no longer rely on the same supplier, the same market, the same ally, you are pushed to find new ways, new strategies, new strengths you didn't know you had. That's where growth happens. In the discomfort, in the unfamiliar, in the places where you have to learn on the fly. And yes, there will be mistakes. There will be deals that don't work out, strategies that fall flat, and paths that turn out to be dead ends. But mistakes are not proof of failure. They are proof of movement. Standing still is the only true failure. If you are learning, adjusting, and pushing forward, you are on the right path. The boldness of this move sends a message beyond borders. It says to every partner, every rival, every observer, we are not afraid to chart our own course. That kind of message cannot be faked. It is seen in actions, not words. It's the same in life. You can tell people who you are all day long, but your decisions will speak low, louder than anything you say. What happens next is critical. Once you've made the leap, you have to back it up with persistence. The excitement of change will fade. The headlines will quiet down. And that's when the real work begins, building something sustainable, something resilient, something that will last long after the initial momentum is gone. Too many people and too many nations take a bold step but fail to follow through. They confuse the first move with the finish line, but the first move is just the starting gun. This is why vision matters. Without a clear vision, bold moves turn into reckless gambles. With vision, even risks become calculated. Vision gives you a reason to endure the setbacks, to stay the course when the results are slow to appear, to remain committed even when the pressure mounts. Without vision, you will be swayed by every opinion, every criticism, every moment of doubt. With vision, you will not be moved by noise. You will be anchored by purpose. Shifting to new alliances is not just a political or economic act. It's a psychological act. It changes the mindset from we need them to we choose them. That subtle shift in language changes everything. Need is a position of weakness. Choice is a position of strength. And when you act from strength, you negotiate differently, you invest differently, you lead differently. It's also a reminder that loyalty in the global arena is different from loyalty in personal relationships. In politics and trade, loyalty is often built on mutual interest, and mutual interest can change overnight. That's not betrayal, it's reality. Understanding that reality allows you to operate without illusions and without resentment when paths diverge. There's a parallel here in everyday life. How many people cling to jobs, relationships, or environments long after they've stopped being mutually beneficial, simply because of history? We tell ourselves we owe it to the past to stay, but the truth is we owe it to the future to leave. History deserves respect, but it should never be a prison. The same principle applies here. Respect the past, but don't let it chain your future. And while change always carries risk, there is a greater risk in standing still while the world evolves around you. Others are building new partnerships, strengthening their positions, and adapting to new realities. If you're not doing the same, you're falling behind, and once you fall behind, catching up becomes far harder than staying ahead. This moment is also about setting an example. When a major player decides to take its future into its own hands, it inspires others to consider doing the same. Courage is contagious. One act of independence can create ripples that reach far beyond what you can see. That's why bold moves are so important. They're not just for the immediate benefit, they shape the mindset of an entire generation. The early days of such a shift will be filled with uncertainty. There will be speculation, predictions, and doubt. But uncertainty is not the enemy. Uncertainty is the space where possibility lives. Without uncertainty, there is no innovation. Without uncertainty, there is no discovery. The unknown is where new power is found. It's important to remember that alliances are not just about economics or politics. They are about values. Who you align with says something about who you are and what you stand for. And when those values align with your long-term goals, you create a foundation that is harder to shake, even in turbulent times. The ability to pivot, to take decisive action when the moment calls for it, is the hallmark of resilience. Resilience is not about never facing challenges, it's about meeting them head-on and coming out stronger. Every decision to adapt is a decision to survive, and every decision to survive is a decision to grow. When you look at history, the nations and individuals who thrive are not the ones who never face setbacks. You're the ones who use setbacks as fuel. They turn obstacles into stepping stones. They understand that disruption is not the end, it's the beginning of a new chapter. And here's what makes this kind of move powerful. It's not just about today, it's about setting the stage for decades to come. It's about planting seeds now that will grow into opportunities for the next generation. That's the kind of leadership that outlives the leader. That's the kind of thinking that builds legacies. In the meantime, the critics will talk, the doubters will doubt, and the opposition will try to undermine the change. But noise has never built anything. Progress is built by those willing to endure the noise and keep building anyway. This is what it means to truly lead, stepping into the uncertainty, making the hard calls, and trusting that the future is worth the risk. Because in the end, the only thing more dangerous than change is the refusal to embrace it. The refusal to embrace change is often disguised as loyalty, patience, or tradition. People will dress it up in noble words, but the truth is, most of the time, it's fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of losing what's familiar. Fear of stepping into a space where the rules are different, the faces are unfamiliar, and the outcomes are uncertain. Yet every major turning point in history has been born from someone's willingness to confront that fear and move anyway. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is the compass. If something scares you because it's uncertain, that's often the sign that it's exactly where growth lives. The same applies here. This shift isn't just about policy. It's about stepping into uncharted waters with the belief that navigating them will make you stronger, more resilient, and more capable than staying in the calm but shallow bay you've always known. The truth is, the calm waters are never as safe as they appear. Benia. At the surface, currents are shifting. Markets change, alliances evolve, priorities realign. What looks stable today can crumble tomorrow if you've built your foundation on someone else's ground. That's why it's dangerous to build your future on a single source, whether it's a single trade partner, a single client, or a single skill. Diversifying isn't just smart strategy, it's survival. The act of turning to new partners like Russia and China is more than economic diversification. It's a mindset shift from dependency to interdependence. Dependency says, we can't do this without you. Interdependence says, we can do this together, but we can also stand without you if needed. That difference is the gap between vulnerability and security. This change will not be without its challenges. There will be cultural differences, political frictions, and moments when the path forward is anything but clear. But here's the reality. Those challenges are not roadblocks, they're training grounds. Every negotiation, every adaptation, every compromise teaches something valuable. And the ones who master that learning curve will be the ones who set the terms in the years to come. The ability to adapt isn't just a survival skill, it's a competitive advantage. While others cling to the old ways out of comfort, the ones who adapt early position themselves to lead in the new landscape. This is as true for nations as it is for individuals. If you're willing to learn new systems, speak new languages, figuratively or literally, and embrace new approaches, you become indispensable in any arena. There's a certain boldness required to make a move like this. It's the same boldness that drives an entrepreneur to walk away from a steady paycheck to build something of their own. The same boldness that pushes an athlete to change their entire training style in search of better results. The same boldness that drives a person to leave the familiar streets of their hometown to explore the world beyond. In every case, the decision comes with risk, but also with the possibility of breakthroughs that would never have been possible otherwise. It's also worth remembering that every major shift tests relationships. The world will watch to see how the old partner reacts. Will bridges be burned completely? Will tensions rise? Will there be attempts to pull you back into the old arrangement? These are the moments where conviction matters most. If you make a bold move but retreat at the first sign of discomfort, you send the message that your decision wasn't built on principle. It was built on impulse. But when you stand firm, you send a different message. This isn't a reaction, it's a strategy. That's an important distinction. Reaction is emotional. Strategy is intentional. Reaction can feel good in the moment, but leaves you vulnerable in the long run. Strategy may be uncomfortable at first, but it sets you up for sustained success. This move, if grounded in strategy, can redefine the balance of power for decades to come. What's remarkable is how shifts like this often reveal hidden strengths. When you're no longer leaning on the same supports, you start to discover resources you didn't know you had. You innovate out of necessity. You develop skills you might have avoided if you'd stayed in your comfort zone. And before long, you realize you're not just surviving without the old support, you're thriving. That's the paradox of independence. It often looks risky from the outside, but from the inside, it's liberating. You start to realize that the things you once thought you couldn't live without were actually limiting your growth. You see that what you feared losing was never the real source of your strength. In the context of global trade, that means creating new supply chains, finding new markets, and forging new political understandings. For an individual, it might mean building new relationships, learning new skills, or stepping into new roles. In both cases, it's T. Same principle. Expand your reach so you can no longer be held hostage by a single point of failure. Of course, expansion comes with complexity. Managing multiple relationships, balancing competing interests, and navigating differing expectations requires more effort than relying on a single partner. But complexity is not a weakness. It's a sign of growth. A tree with only one branch is fragile. A tree with many branches can weather storms. What will make or break this new direction is the ability to stay consistent. Change is exciting at the start, but the grind of making it work day after day is where most falter. The headlines will fade, the world's attention will move on, and that's when the discipline to keep building will matter most. Anyone can make a bold announcement. Only the disciplined can turn it into a lasting reality. It's also important to remember that new alliances don't have to mean hostility toward the old. This isn't about making enemies. It's about broadening the field. You can respect where you've come from without letting it define where you're going. That's a mark of maturity, the ability to walk away from dependence without walking into bitterness. In life, we often think in terms of either or. Either I keep this relationship or I find a new one. Either I stay here or I go there. But the most resilient strategies are built on both and. You can have multiple connections, multiple opportunities, multiple strategies running at once. It's about adding layers of strength, not replacing one dependency with another. This approach takes foresight. It requires thinking beyond the next quarter, the next election cycle, or the next season of life. It asks you to consider what will serve not just your present needs, but your future ambitions. And that kind of long-term thinking is rare, because it demands patience in a world addicted to immediacy. The irony is that by being patient, by playing the long game, you often achieve more in the short term than those who chase quick wins. That's because your moves are deliberate. You're not pulled in every direction by the latest trend or the loudest voice. You act with intention, and that consistency compounds over time. For anyone watching this moment unfold, the lesson is clear. Your future is too important to leave in someone else's hands. Diversify your options. Build your independence. Step into the unknown, not because you're certain it will work, but because you're certain you can handle whatever comes. Because at the end of the day, that's the real source of power, not the alliances you hold, but the confidence that you can adapt if those alliances change. It's not about predicting every outcome, it's about trusting yourself to navigate the ones you can't predict. That's why moments like this are so transformative. They strip away illusions, force clarity, and demand courage. They remind you that strength isn't measured by how tightly you can hold on to something, but by how confidently you can let it go when it no longer serves your vision.